Ethan Caldwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his father's office, the Manhattan skyline stretching before him like a chessboard he had long since mastered. At 35, the white American heir to Caldwell Properties was a study in control. Sharp blue eyes, neatly trimmed dark hair, and a tailored navy suit that spoke of wealth and precision. His reflection in the glass betrayed none of the restlessness that churned within. As the face of one of the East Coast's largest real estate firms, Ethan had built a reputation for cold calculation, closing deals that turned competitors pale. Yet today, his mind was not on contracts or skyscrapers, but on the summons that had brought him here. The heavy oak door opened, and Charles Caldwell entered, leaning on a polished cane. His once robust frame, now frail from a worsening heart condition, seemed diminished against the opulent office. Mahogany panels, leather-bound books, a crystal decanter glinting in the morning light. Like Ethan's, Charles's gray eyes held a weight that made Ethan straighten his tie, a reflex to armor himself against whatever was coming. "You wanted to see me, Father?" Ethan's voice was clipped, professional, as he turned from the window. Charles nodded, lowering himself into the high-backed leather chair behind his desk. "Sit, Ethan. It's time we discuss the future of Caldwell Properties." Ethan took the seat opposite, his posture rigid. He had known this conversation was inevitable. Charles's health had been declining for over a year, each hospital visit a reminder that the empire Ethan had helped build might soon rest solely on his shoulders. "Your heart again?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Not just that." Charles's tone was grave. "The board is restless. They're concerned about stability, about what happens when I step down. They want assurance that the company will remain strong through the transition." Ethan's jaw tightened. "What do you need me to do?" Charles reached into a drawer and pulled out a slim folder, its edges crisp. "They want you to be married before I relinquish control." "Married?" Ethan's voice hardened, a rare crack in his composure. He leaned forward, elbows on the armrests. "Since when has my life mattered to the board?" Charles's gaze was unflinching. "Since you became the next in line to run a billion-dollar company. You're 35, Ethan, and known for your fleeting relationships. The board sees a revolving door of women, not stability. They want traditional values, a family man to inspire confidence." Ethan clenched his fists, the chair's leather creaking under his grip. "So I'm to find a wife to play house for the board's amusement?" "I've already found one." Charles slid the folder across the desk. "Amara Ellis. 28, a librarian. No family connections, no scandals. Perfect for our needs." Ethan stared at the folder as if it were a contract he hadn't vetted. He flipped it open, revealing a photograph of a black American woman with a neutral expression. Her dark eyes were framed by oversized glasses, her coiled hair pulled into a severe bun. She wore no makeup, and her gray sweater seemed chosen to blend into the background. Plain, unremarkable, nothing like the polished women who usually caught his eye. "She's not what I expected," Ethan said, choosing his words carefully. "That's the point." Charles leaned back, his cane resting against the desk. "She's not after your money or status. I had her thoroughly investigated. She keeps to herself, works hard, and pays her bills promptly. She's agreed to the arrangement." Ethan's brow furrowed. "And why would she agree to marry a stranger?" "Stability, security, a chance to make a difference with our charitable foundation." "She has her reasons." Charles's tone suggested he knew more, but wouldn't share. "She's a practical choice, Ethan. No complications." Ethan closed the folder, his mind racing. "And if I refuse?" Charles's expression darkened. "Then I'll name your cousin Nathan as my successor. But we both know he'll run this company underground within a year." The threat hung in the air like smoke. With his reckless investments and penchant for shortcuts, Nathan was a liability Ethan had spent years outmaneuvering. Ethan had clawed his way to the top of Caldwell Properties, sacrificing personal ties for professional dominance. He wouldn't let it slip to his cousin's incompetent hands. "Fine," Ethan said, his voice cold as steel. "When do I meet her?" "Tomorrow. The wedding is set for next month." Charles's eyes softened, a rare glimpse of the father beneath the patriarch. "One more thing, son. This isn't the worst thing in the world. Marriage might ground you." Ethan didn't respond. He tucked the folder under his arm and stood, his movements precise. "Is that all?" Charles nodded, and Ethan strode out, the folder feeling heavier than it should. In the elevator, he opened it again, studying Amara Ellis's photo. Something in her eyes, guarded, resolute, unsettled him. He snapped the folder shut. This was a business deal, nothing more. He'd meet, marry, and keep her at arm's length, just as he did with anything that threatened his control. But as the elevator descended, a flicker of curiosity stirred. Who was Amara Ellis, and what drove her to agree to this? Ethan pushed the thought aside, stepping into the bustling lobby of Caldwell Properties. He had an empire to run, and no time for distractions, not even a fiancée chosen by his father. Ethan Caldwell adjusted his cufflinks, the faint clink of platinum against starched cotton, which was the only sound in the private dining room of La Lumiere, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. The space was a cocoon of elegance, soft amber lighting, velvet drapes, a single orchid centerpiece casting delicate shadows on the linen tablecloth. He had chosen this venue for its discretion, where deals were struck behind closed doors. The deal was personal tonight, meeting Amara Ellis, the woman his father had chosen as his bride. He glanced at his watch. 6:58 p.m. She was due any moment. Ethan's mind churned, replaying the folder's contents. Amara's plain photograph, her unremarkable resume as a librarian, her insistence on privacy. Charles had assured him she was vetted, free of scandals. But Ethan trusted no one's judgment but his own. This marriage was a means to an end, securing Caldwell Properties against the board's doubts and his cousin Nathan's ambitions. He'd play his part, but keep her at arm's length. The door opened, and a hostess in a sleek black dress stepped aside. "Miss Ellis, Mr. Caldwell is waiting." Amara entered, her footsteps soft on the polished floor. She wore a loose gray dress that seemed designed to deflect attention, its hem brushing her ankles. Her coiled hair was pinned in a tight bun, and oversized glasses magnified her dark eyes, giving her a studious air. Her posture was straight, almost defensive, as if braced for scrutiny. Ethan stood, extending a hand. "Miss Ellis, Mr. Caldwell." Her voice was quiet but steady, her handshake firm. Her eyes met his briefly before flickering to the table, assessing the space with a quick, practiced scan. They sat, and an uncomfortable silence settled, broken only by the faint clinking of a waiter setting down water glasses. Ethan studied her, noting the absence of jewelry and the minimal makeup that dulled rather than enhanced her features. She was an enigma, deliberately unremarkable, yet a stillness in her intrigued him against his will. "Let's be clear," Ethan began, leaning forward slightly. "This marriage is a business arrangement. My father believes it will stabilize the company. I have no interest in a real relationship, but I'll fulfill my obligations. Public appearances, shared residence, whatever the board expects." Amara nodded, her expression unreadable behind her glasses. "I understand. I'm not looking for love either." Her bluntness caught him off guard, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. She didn't flinch or elaborate, but she held his gaze. "Good," he said, recovering. Then we're aligned. The wedding will be small and elegant, and it will be at the Caldwell estate. You'll have your suite in my penthouse. We'll appear together at key events. Otherwise, our lives remain separate. I have conditions, Amara said, her voice cutting through his rehearsed terms. Ethan raised an eyebrow, unused to being interrupted. Such as? I want to keep working part-time at the library, and I'd like a role in the Caldwell Foundation's literacy programs. Real involvement, not just a title. She paused, her fingers tightening around her water glass. And I need my privacy. No digging into my past, no unauthorized photos. Ethan leaned back, assessing her. The library request was reasonable, and the foundation role was ambitious but manageable. The privacy demand, however, piqued his suspicion. What was she hiding? Agreed, he said slowly, provided your past doesn't bring surprises that could harm the Caldwell name. There won't be. Her response was almost too quick, and Ethan made a mental note to have his security team monitor her discreetly. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. Then we have a deal. He extended his hand again, and they shook, her palm cool against his. My assistant will send you the details. Amara stood, smoothing her dress. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. She turned to leave, her gait measured but oddly graceful, at odds with her plain appearance. Ethan watched her go, a nagging curiosity stirring. This woman was more than she seemed, but he dismissed the thought. She was a means to an end, nothing more, nothing. Chapter 3. An hour north of Manhattan, the Caldwell estate envisioned timeless wealth. Rolling lawns, ivy-clad stone walls, a manor glowing under chandeliers. 4 weeks later, the wedding was as Ethan had specified. Small, with 50 guests, mostly board members and close allies. The ceremony unfolded in the estate's rose garden, with white petals scattered on a silk runner and a string quartet playing softly. Ethan stood at the altar, his black tuxedo impeccable, his expression composed. Amara approached, her simple white gown accentuating her slender frame. Her hair remained in its severe bun, glasses firmly in place, yet the gown's elegant cut hinted at a presence she usually concealed. Seated in the front row, Charles gave Ethan a nod of approval, his cane resting beside him. The officiant's words were a blur, vows of duty, not devotion. You may kiss the bride, he announced. Ethan leaned down, intending a perfunctory peck, but as his lips brushed Amara's, a jolt passed between them, electric and unbidden. Her breath caught, her eyes widening behind her glasses. Ethan pulled back too quickly, his pulse unsteady. The guests clapped, oblivious to the moment's weight. At the reception held in the manor's ballroom, Charles approached Ethan with a glass of champagne. Congratulations, son. The board is pleased. Then my job is done, Ethan replied, his tone dry. He glanced at Amara, who was speaking quietly with an aunt, her smile polite but distant. Give her a chance, Charles said, his voice softening. She might surprise you. Ethan didn't reply, his gaze lingering on Amara. The kiss replayed in his mind, an anomaly he couldn't categorize. He shook it off, draining his glass. This was a contract, not a romance. Later, a staff member showed Amara to her suite at Ethan's penthouse, a sleek fortress of glass and steel overlooking Central Park. Ethan stood at the doorway, hands in his pockets. This is your space. Bedroom, sitting area, bathroom. My rooms are across the apartment. We share the living room, kitchen, and balcony. Amara nodded, taking in the modern elegance. Cream linens, a mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling windows. It's beautiful. Thank you. I'll leave you to settle in. Good night, Mrs. Caldwell. The title sounded foreign and awkward to both of them. Mr. Caldwell, she called as he turned to leave. "I'll do my best to be the wife the company needs. That's all I ask." He closed the door, the click echoing in the silent hall. Alone, Ethan poured a whiskey, staring at the city lights. Amara Ellis was now his wife, a stranger bound to him by necessity. He'd keep his distance, maintain control, yet the memory of that kiss lingered, a spark he couldn't quite extinguish, threatening to complicate the careful order of his world. Amara Ellis sat alone in the quiet of the New York Public Library's reading room, the scent of old books and polished wood wrapping around her like a familiar embrace. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting golden stripes across the oak table where she sorted returned novels. Her glasses slid down her nose, and she pushed them up, a reflex as ingrained as the careful way she arranged her coiled hair in a tight bun each morning. To the world, she was an unassuming librarian, her gray cardigan and muted demeanor designed to deflect attention. But today, as her fingers lingered on a worn copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God, her mind drifted to a past she had buried beneath layers of disguise. 3 years ago, Amara had been someone else. She closed her eyes, and the library faded, replaced by a vibrant memory of Harlem, where she grew up in a cramped but warm apartment above a jazz cafe. Her mother, Celeste, a schoolteacher laughing like summer rain, had filled their home with books, dog-eared paperbacks, library loans, treasures from flea markets. Amara, Celeste would say, stories are powerful, her dark eyes sparkling as she read aloud to her daughters. Amara and her younger sister Nia would sprawl on the rug, lost in tales of heroines who defied the odds. Those evenings shaped Amara's love for libraries and her dream of becoming a curator of stories. College at NYU had been a triumph. Her scholarship was a testament to her drive. But grief struck in her junior year when Celeste died of breast cancer, leaving Amara and Nia to navigate a world suddenly hollow. Nia, always the dreamer, moved to London for art school, and Amara threw herself into her library job in Boston, seeking solace in routine. It was at a charity gala, surrounded by glittering donors, that she met Isaiah Morgan. His charm was effortless. A polished smile, a tailored suit, a senator's son who seemed to see her when others didn't. He brought her coffee during late-night study sessions and sent roses that filled her tiny apartment with color. For a moment, she believed in love. The memory shifted, darkening. 6 months into their engagement, Isaiah changed. His charm became control, criticizing her clothes, tracking her phone, and isolating her from friends. The first time he grabbed her arm too tightly, leaving bruises beneath her sleeve, she excused it as stress. The second time, when his fist grazed her cheek, she knew she had to go. But Isaiah's family was a political dynasty, and their influence was a shield that made her accusations vanish. The police dismissed her, a report lost in a system swayed by Senator Morgan's connections. Amara felt trapped with no family in Boston and Nia abroad, her mother's voice a distant echo urging her to fight. She fled in the dead of night, selling a necklace Isaiah had given her to fund her escape. In New York, she reinvented herself. Glasses to hide her eyes, drab clothes to dull her presence, a librarian's job to blend into the background. She cut contact with Nia, fearing Isaiah might use her sister to find her. Each day, she checked locks twice, avoided crowds, and wore her disguise like armor. The library became her sanctuary, its quiet stacks a place to rebuild her strength. Yet fear lingered, a shadow that quickened her pulse at every unfamiliar face. Amara opened her eyes, the library snapping back into focus. A patron approached, asking for a book recommendation, and she smiled, slipping into her role with practiced ease. But as she handed over a novel, her thoughts turned to Ethan Caldwell. Sealed just weeks ago, Their marriage was a lifeline, a shield of wealth and power against Isaiah's reach. Ethan's cold pragmatism, his sharp blue eyes assessing her every move, should have made her wary. Yet his agreement to her conditions, her library work, her role in the Caldwell Foundation, her privacy, had been a small act of trust. And that kiss at their wedding, brief but electric, had stirred something she hadn't felt in years: hope. She stacked the last book, her fingers brushing the cover of Zora Neale Hurston's novel, A Story of a Woman Finding Her Voice. Amara had once been that woman, bold and dreaming, before Isaiah stole her light. Now, married to a man who saw her as a contract, she wondered if she could reclaim that spark. Ethan was a puzzle, aloof, calculating, yet there was a flicker in his gaze during their kiss, a crack in his armor. She pushed the thought away. This marriage was for protection, not dreams. Still, as she locked the library's staff room and stepped into the autumn chill, she couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan Caldwell might unravel her carefully guarded world. Back at the penthouse, Amara paused at the balcony, the city lights a glittering sea below. She adjusted her glasses, a habit to anchor herself. Ethan was at the office, and his absence was a relief and a curiosity. What drove a man like him, who held the world at his fingertips yet seemed so guarded? She didn't know, but for the first time in years, she felt a pull to find out. Not for love, but for the possibility of something real. She turned from the balcony, her heart a mix of fear and resolve, ready to play the wife Caldwell Properties needed, even as her past whispered that safety was never guaranteed. The penthouse was a fortress of glass and silence, its sleek lines and muted grays a stark contrast to the vibrant city pulsing below. Ethan Caldwell moved through his morning routine with mechanical precision. Black coffee, pressed suit, a glance at the financial news on his tablet. Weeks into his marriage to Amara Ellis, their lives had settled into a predictable rhythm. He left for Caldwell Properties before dawn, returned after midnight, and saw Amara only at obligatory events where she played the role of the dutiful wife. Her presence was unobtrusive, her plain attire and thick glasses ensuring she faded into the background, just as they'd agreed. Yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something about her didn't add up. He noticed it in small moments, the way she double-checked the penthouse locks each night, her glances at strangers in crowds, the tension in her shoulders when a car backfired on the street. These weren't the habits of an ordinary librarian, and Ethan, whose success relied on reading people, found her secrecy intriguing and unsettling. Tonight, he'd returned early, a rare break from a grueling merger negotiation. The penthouse was quiet, the living room's dim lamps casting long shadows across the marble floor. "Amara?" he called, loosening his tie as he crossed the open-plan kitchen. No answer. Her suite's door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the hall. Ethan hesitated. Her privacy was part of their deal. But curiosity, sharpened by weeks of suspicion, pushed him forward. "Amara, are you—" He nudged the door open and froze. Amara stood before her bathroom mirror, transformed. Her glasses were gone, revealing striking eyes that caught the light like polished amber. Her coiled hair, freed from its tight bun, cascaded in dark waves past her shoulders, framing a face of luminous beauty, high cheekbones, full lips, skin glowing without the drab makeup she usually wore. She wore a simple tank top and jeans, the casual fit accentuating a grace that her usual shapeless dresses concealed. She was stunning, a stranger in his wife's place. Amara gasped, spinning to face him, her hands fumbling for a towel as if to shield herself, though she was fully clothed. "Ethan, I didn't hear you," she stammered, her voice tight with panic. He stared, his mind struggling to reconcile the image before him with the woman he'd married. "Who are you?" His tone was low, edged with ice. Fear flashed across her face, quickly replaced by a guarded resolve. "What do you mean?" "This." He gestured at her, stepping closer. "This is a disguise. The glasses, the clothes, the makeup. It's all deliberate." "Why?" Amara's hand trembled as she set the towel down, her eyes locked on his. "It isn't very easy." "Then simplify it." His voice was a blade, cutting through the silence. "Because it seems my wife has been lying to me. She said I never lied about who I am," her voice gaining strength. "I'm still Amara Ellis. The appearance. It's protection. Protection from what?" Ethan's suspicion battled a strange urge to understand, his gaze searching her face for answers. She took a deep breath, her shoulders squaring as if bracing for impact. "From someone dangerous." "My ex-fiancé, Isaiah Morgan. He's powerful, connected, and if he finds me—" Her voice faltered, but she pressed on. "This disguise keeps me hidden. It's how I've survived." Ethan's mind raced, piecing together her guarded habits, her privacy demands. Isaiah Morgan, a senator's son, was no minor threat. The name carried weight and political influence that could crush most opponents. "He hurt you," Ethan said, not a question, but a realization, his jaw tightening at the thought. Amara's eyes, unguarded for the first time, told him everything: pain, fear, and defiance. "Yes. And I ran because no one would believe me over a Morgan. Your father's offer, this marriage, it was a shield. Your name, your resources, they protect me." Ethan stepped back, processing her words. She'd used him, just as he'd used her, to appease the board. It was a fair trade, yet the admission stung, stirring a protectiveness he hadn't expected. "So our marriage is your hiding place. Isn't it yours, too?" she challenged, her voice steady now. "You needed a wife for the board. We're both getting what we want." He couldn't argue, but her secret shifted something in him. "No more lies, Amara. If I'm protecting you, I need the truth. Can you promise that?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I can stay. Like this. Here, when it's just us. No disguise. But outside, I need to keep it up for now." Ethan studied her, the woman behind the mask. Beautiful, yes, but more than that, resilient. She'd survived something he couldn't yet fathom, and her strength, quiet as it was, demanded respect. "Fine," he said at last. "You stay, and I'll keep your secret. But I'm watching, Amara. No surprises." Relief softened her features, a small smile breaking through. "Thank you, Ethan." He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "You don't need to hide here, not with me." The words surprised him, slipping out before he could stop them. He closed the door, his heart pounding with a mix of suspicion and something softer, unnameable. In his study, he poured a whiskey, the amber liquid catching the light as he replayed the moment. Her eyes, her truth, the weight of her past. Amara Ellis was no longer just a contract. She was a mystery he felt compelled to solve, and that realization unsettled him more than any business deal ever had. The ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria glittered under crystal chandeliers, a constellation of wealth and influence gathered for the Caldwell Foundation's annual charity gala. Ethan Caldwell moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his tailored black tuxedo accentuating his sharp features, blue eyes scanning the room for key investors. Tonight was critical. His first major public appearance with Amara as his wife, a performance to solidify the board's confidence in his leadership. Yet his mind lingered on her revelation 3 weeks prior. Her stunning transformation, her past with Isaiah Morgan, the fear she hid behind her disguise. That knowledge had shifted something in him, a crack in his carefully constructed walls. Amara stood at his side, her conservative navy dress a deliberate choice to blend in. Her coiled hair remained in its tight bun, glasses firmly in place, her expression composed but distant. She played the role of Mrs. Caldwell flawlessly, polite nods, brief smiles. Yet Ethan noticed the tension in her posture, the way her fingers gripped her clutch when strangers approached too closely. As promised, he'd kept her secret, but his security team was now discreetly monitoring Isaiah's movements. The gala, with its swarm of Manhattan's elite, felt like a minefield. "Mr. Caldwell, a pleasure to see you settled," said James Thornton, a silver-haired investor with a grip like iron. His eyes flicked to Amara, curiosity thinly veiled. "And this must be the new Mrs. Caldwell. How did you two meet?" "Through family connections," Ethan replied smoothly, his hand resting lightly on Amara's elbow, a protective and performative gesture. "Amara's been a tremendous asset to our foundation." "How charming," Thornton's wife, Eleanor, interjected, her smile sharp as cut glass. "A librarian. So quaint." The word dripped with condescension, and Amara's fingers tightened on her clutch, though her face remained serene. Ethan felt a flare of anger, unexpected and sharp. "Amara's work in literacy programs has doubled our foundation's outreach," he said, his tone cool but pointed. "Not everyone measures success by their bank account, Mrs. Thornton." Eleanor's smile faltered, and she retreated with a murmured excuse. Thornton chuckled, clapping Ethan's shoulder. "Well said. Enjoy your evening." Amara glanced at Ethan as they moved away, her eyes softening with surprise. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the string quartet. "You're a Caldwell now," Ethan replied, his gaze steady. "No one insults my family." The words were automatic, a reflex of loyalty, but they carried a weight he hadn't intended. Amara's lips parted, as if to speak, but she nodded, her expression unreadable. The evening wore on, a blur of handshakes and small talk. When the band struck up a waltz, Ethan offered his arm, leading Amara to the dance floor. Her hand rested lightly in his, her steps precise but stiff, maintaining a proper distance. The crowd watched, their curiosity a palpable pressure. "Relax," Ethan murmured, his hand firm at her waist. "They're just looking for gossip." "I'm trying," Amara replied, her voice low. "It's hard to feel invisible when every eye is on us." She met his gaze, her glasses catching the chandelier's light. "Is that all I am to you, Ethan? A name to protect?" The question caught him off guard, piercing the armor of his detachment. He wanted to say she was a contract, a means to an end. But the memory of her unveiled beauty, her quiet strength in confessing her past, held him silent. "What else would you be?" he said at last, his voice softer than he intended. Amara looked away, her jaw tightening. "Nothing. Forget I asked." They danced in silence, the music a fragile bridge between them. Ethan felt the weight of her question, the faint warmth of her hand in his. For a man who thrived on control, the stir of something deeper, something unquantifiable, was unsettling. When the song ended, he released her, stepping back as the crowd applauded. Later, as they prepared to leave, Amara paused by the ballroom's grand staircase, adjusting her shawl. "Ethan," she said, her voice tentative but warm. "I know this marriage is an arrangement, but could we try to be friends? It might make this easier." He studied her, the sincerity in her eyes disarming. a friend. It wasn't part of their deal, yet the idea didn't repel him. Friends, he said, testing the word. Maybe. She offered a small smile, the first genuine one he'd seen, and it struck him like a spark. Small, fleeting, but capable of igniting something larger. "Good night, Ethan," she said, turning toward their waiting car. He watched her go, her silhouette framed against the city's glow. In his study later, Ethan poured a whiskey, the glass cold against his palm. Amara's smile replayed in his mind, challenging his carefully ordered world. He'd defended her tonight, not just for the board's sake, but because her quiet dignity demanded it. She was no longer just a name, a contract. She was Amara, complex, guarded, and inexplicably drawing him in. He set the glass down, untouched. Friendship might be a start, but something told him it wouldn't be the end. Ethan Caldwell sat alone in his study, the penthouse silent except for the faint hum of the city beyond the glass walls. The room was a sanctuary of order. Mahogany bookshelves, a sleek desk, a single lamp casting a warm pool of light over his untouched whiskey. The gala at the Waldorf Astoria was hours behind him, but Amara's question lingered like a melody he couldn't shake. "Is that all I am to you? A name to protect?" Her words, soft yet piercing, had unraveled something in him, a thread he'd spent years keeping tightly wound. He leaned back in his leather chair, blue eyes fixed on the Manhattan skyline, its glittering spires a testament to his control. Ethan had built his life on discipline, turning Caldwell Properties into an empire through calculated risks and emotional detachment. Relationships were transactions, easily managed, easily ended. His reputation as a bachelor was a shield, keeping others at a distance where they couldn't disrupt his carefully ordered world. Yet Amara Ellis, with her guarded eyes and quiet strength, had slipped past his defenses. He closed his eyes, and a memory surfaced, sharp and unbidden. He was 16, standing in a hospital room, the air heavy with antiseptic and grief. His mother, Eleanor, lay frail in bed, her once vibrant smile faded by illness. She had been his anchor, her laughter, her stories of art and travel, her quiet resilience in the face of his father's ambitions. "Don't close yourself off, Ethan," she whispered, her hand weak in his. Love is worth the risk. He'd promised to try, but when she died weeks later, he buried that promise with her, choosing control over vulnerability. His father, Charles, had mourned silently, and Ethan learned to do the same, building walls no one could breach. Until Amara. Her revelation in the bathroom, her stunning beauty unveiled, her confession of fleeing Isaiah Morgan, had stirred something he couldn't name. At the gala, defending her against Eleanor Thornton's sneer had felt instinctive, not just a performance for the board. Her small, genuine smile, as she suggested friendship, had caught him off guard, a spark that warmed the cold edges of his heart. He saw his mother in her, not in appearance, but in the quiet defiance that refused to break under pressure. Amara had survived a past he was only beginning to understand, and her courage made his detachment feel like a weakness. Ethan stood, pacing to the window. The city stretched below, a chessboard where he'd always been the king. But Amara wasn't a pawn in his game. She was a partner, bound to him by necessity, yet challenging him to be more. Her question on the dance floor had been a mirror, reflecting a truth he'd avoided. He didn't want her to be just a name. The kiss at their wedding, the jolt of her touch, her steady gaze behind those oversized glasses, they haunted him, threatening the control he prized. He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration knotting his chest. Emotions were messy, unpredictable, a liability in a world where precision was power. Yet the thought of Amara facing Isaiah's threat alone ignited a protectiveness he couldn't suppress. He'd agreed to keep her secret, to shield her. But it was more than duty now. It was personal. Her strength, her vulnerability, her refusal to crumble. They called to a part of him he'd locked away since his mother's death. The study's clock chimed midnight, and Ethan returned to his desk, picking up the whiskey but not drinking. He thought of his mother's words. Love is worth the risk. He'd dismissed them as sentiment, a luxury he couldn't afford. But Amara's presence in his life, her quiet offer of friendship, made him question that dismissal. Could he open himself to her, even a little, without losing the control that defined him? The idea was terrifying, exhilarating, a challenge he hadn't faced in years. A soft sound broke his reverie. A faint creak from the hallway. He stepped to the door, opening it to find the penthouse dark, Amara's suite closed. Had she stirred, unable to sleep as he was? He imagined her in her room, glasses off, hair loose, wrestling with her fears. The urge to knock, to check on her, was strong, but he resisted. Their agreement was explicit. Separate lives, shared only for appearances. Yet the line between agreement and reality was blurring. Ethan returned to the window, the city's lights a reminder of the empire he'd built. He'd protect Amara, not just for the company, but because she'd awakened something in him, a longing for connection he hadn't known he craved. Friendship, she'd suggested. Maybe it was a start. But as he stood alone, the weight of her question heavy in his chest, Ethan knew it could become something more that might redefine his carefully ordered world. Ethan Caldwell leaned against the glass wall of his office at Caldwell Properties, the Manhattan skyline a jagged silhouette against the dusk. His tablet displayed a report on the Hudson Tower project, a multi-billion-dollar development critical to the company's expansion. But his focus was fractured, pulled to Amara Ellis and the secret she'd revealed weeks ago. Her flight from Isaiah Morgan, a senator's son whose charm masked a dangerous cruelty. Since the gala, where Ethan had defended her, their marriage had shifted. Less a contract, more a cautious alliance. Yet the shadow of her past loomed, and Ethan's instincts, honed by years of navigating corporate sharks, sensed trouble brewing. His assistant, Sarah, knocked and entered, her expression tense. "Mr. Caldwell, the Zoning Commission's report came in. Isaiah Morgan is leading a push to block the Hudson Tower, citing environmental concerns." Ethan's jaw tightened. Isaiah Morgan? The name hit like a warning shot. When did he handle his father's business? "He's taken over Senator Morgan's real estate dealings," Sarah replied, handing him a file. "Our sources say he's digging into your personal life, specifically your marriage." Ethan flipped through the file, his blue eyes narrowing. Isaiah's involvement wasn't a coincidence. Was Amara's past catching up, or was she playing a deeper game? Suspicion flared, but he pushed it down, recalling her trembling voice as she confessed her fear. "Double our security detail," he ordered, "and keep tabs on Morgan's movements." That evening, Ethan returned to the penthouse earlier than usual, the city's lights casting a silver glow across the living room. Amara was in the kitchen, pouring tea, her glasses and tight bun in place, though she wore a simple sweater that hinted at the grace she hid. "You're home early," she said, her voice steady, but her eyes searching his face. "We need to talk," Ethan said, setting the file on the counter. "Isaiah Morgan is blocking a significant project. He's asking questions about you, about us." Amara's hand froze mid-pour, tea splashing onto the counter. She whispered that he can't know I'm here, her composure cracking. "Can't he?" Ethan's tone was sharp, suspicion resurfacing. "You didn't mention he had ties to real estate. Is this a coincidence, Amara?" Or did you know? Her eyes flashed with hurt. I had no idea. I've avoided anything connected to the Morgans since I left Boston. You think I'm working with him? She set the teapot down, her movements deliberate. Look at me, Ethan. I've hidden for years to escape that man. I'd never betray you. Her intensity, the raw edge in her voice, quelled his doubts. He exhaled, running a hand through his dark hair. Then tell me everything. If I'm going to protect you, I need to know what we're against. Amara nodded, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. I have proof. Things I kept in case he ever found me. She crossed to her suite, returning with a small thumb drive. Photos of what he did to me, hospital records, and a police report that disappeared. I hid it as insurance. Ethan took the drive, his chest tightening at the thought of her injuries. Why didn't you show me this sooner? I was afraid you'd think I was using you, she admitted. But you deserve to know the truth. He plugged the drive into his tablet, scrolling through images that made his blood boil. Bruises on her arms, a medical report detailing a fractured wrist, a black eye. He did this to you, he said, his voice low, dangerous. And his family covered it up. Yes, she said, her gaze steady. That's why I married you. The Caldwell name is a shield he can't touch. Ethan met her eyes, seeing not just fear, but defiance. Her decision to share the evidence was a choice, a step toward trust. He said, "You're not alone anymore." The words slipping out before he could stop them. "I'll handle Morgan." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed, an alert from security. "There's been a breach," he read aloud, his pulse spiking. "Someone accessed our penthouse cameras. They have images of you, without your disguise." Amara paled, her hand gripping the counter. "Isaiah, he's found me." "We're leaving," Ethan said, his voice firm. "The Hamptons estate. It's secure and private. Pack a bag." Within the hour, they were in a black SUV, speeding toward the coast. The Caldwell estate sprawled across acres of manicured grounds, its stone facade glowing under moonlight. Inside, Ethan checked the upgraded security system, his mind racing. Amara stood by the living room's fireplace, her glasses gone, hair loose, her natural beauty stark against the fear in her eyes. "You'll be safe here," Ethan said, joining her. "No one gets in without clearance." She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "Thank you, Ethan, for believing me." A storm rolled in from the Atlantic, thunder rumbling as rain lashed the windows. A loud clap shook the house, and Amara flinched, her teacup slipping from her hands to shatter on the hardwood. She trembled, eyes wide, and Ethan moved instinctively, closing the distance between them. "Amara, it's just the storm," he said, his voice gentle. "It's not just that," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's him. Always him." Ethan pulled her into his arms without thinking, her head resting against his chest. She stiffened, then relaxed, her breath warm through his shirt. "You're safe," he murmured, his hand stroking her hair. "I won't let him near you." They stood like that, the storm raging outside, until Amara's trembling eased. She looked up, her eyes meeting his, and something shifted, a current of trust, of need. Ethan leaned down, his lips finding hers in a fierce and tender kiss, months of tension dissolving in the heat of it. When they parted, both breathless, Amara's gaze held wonder. "Ethan, we should rest," he said, his voice rough, pulling back before he lost himself entirely. "Tomorrow, we plan." She nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Together?" "Together." He watched her head to her room, the kiss lingering like a promise. In the library, Ethan sat, the thumb drive heavy in his pocket. Isaiah Morgan was a threat he'd neutralize for the company, and Amara, the woman who was rewriting his heart. The Caldwell estate in the Hamptons stood like a sentinel against the dawn, its stone walls bathed in soft light as the storm's last clouds drifted over the Atlantic. Ethan Caldwell paced the library, the thumb drive Amara had given him heavy in his pocket. Its contents, photos of her bruises, hospital records, fueling a quiet rage. Isaiah Morgan's breach of their penthouse cameras had confirmed his threat, and the kiss he'd shared with Amara last night, fierce and unguarded, had shifted their marriage into uncharted territory. Ethan's blue eyes flicked to the window, where Amara stood on the terrace, her hair loose, glasses gone, her silhouette a stark reminder of the woman she hid from the world. He needed a plan, and he needed his father. Charles Caldwell had built an empire with ruthless precision, but his heart condition had softened his edges, revealing a man who valued family above all. Ethan dialed his father's number, the line ringing as he gripped the phone. "Father, it's urgent. I need you at the Hamptons estate. It's about Amara." Charles arrived within hours, his cane tapping a steady rhythm on the oak floor as he entered the library. His gray eyes, so like Ethan's, were sharp with concern. "You sounded serious, son. What's going on?" Ethan gestured for Amara to join them. She stepped inside, her casual sweater and jeans contrasting with her usual disguise, her natural beauty unguarded. Charles's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing, waiting. Ethan took a breath, his voice steady but taut. "Amara's in danger. Her ex-fiancé, Isaiah Morgan, abused her in Boston. She fled and changed her appearance to hide. Now he's found her, hacked our penthouse cameras, seen her without her disguise. He's blocking the Hudson Tower project, and I think it's personal." Amara met Charles's gaze, her chin lifting. "I married Ethan for protection, sir. The Caldwell name keeps Isaiah at bay. But he's relentless, and I'm afraid of what he'll do next." Charles leaned on his cane, his expression unreadable. Isaiah Morgan, Senator Morgan's son. A powerful enemy. He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at Amara. "You remind me of someone I lost. My sister, Margaret. She was trapped in a marriage like yours, to a man who hid his cruelty behind charm. I was young, too focused on building this company to see her pain. By the time I acted, it was too late. She was gone." Amara's eyes glistened, but she held his gaze. "I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell. I didn't mean to bring trouble to your family. You are family now," Charles said firmly, his voice thick with emotion. "And the Caldwells protect their own. Margaret taught me that. Too late." He turned to Ethan. "What's your plan?" "I need leverage," Ethan said, pulling out the thumb drive. "Amara gave me evidence of Isaiah's abuse, photos, medical records, but he's threatening to expose her, claiming she's deceiving us. We need to neutralize him before he acts." Charles nodded, his mind already working. "I've known Senator Morgan for 30 years. We've both buried secrets to protect our names. I'll make calls and remind him that his son's actions could unravel their political dynasty. Isaiah's reckless, restraining orders, hushed-up scandals. His father won't risk exposure." Amara stepped forward, her voice steady. "Isaiah won't go quietly. He's obsessed, vindictive. If he's cornered, he'll lash out." "Then we corner him carefully," Charles replied, a cold smile on his lips. "I'll arrange for the senator to send Isaiah abroad, permanently. A diplomatic posting, far from New York. If he resists, I have files on the Morgans' financial irregularities that could trigger a federal investigation." Ethan's respect for his father deepened, seeing the man who'd taught him to wield power with precision. And the board? He asked. They'll want answers about Amara's past if Isaiah leaks anything. We'll tell them her appearance was a security measure, Charles said, linked to her work with domestic violence victims through the foundation. It's close enough to the truth. He looked at Amara. You've been working on literacy programs, but I hear you're planning a women's shelter. Margaret would have been proud. Amara's smile was slight, but genuine. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. I want to help others like me and give them a safe place to rebuild. Call me Charles, he said, his tone warm. You're my daughter-in-law, not a stranger. Ethan watched the exchange, a knot loosening in his chest. His father's support, rooted in personal loss, made the fight ahead feel less solitary. We're meeting Isaiah tomorrow night, he said at the Belvedere Hotel. He wants to confront Amara and expose her. I'll handle it, but I need your contacts to ensure he leaves after. Done, Charles said, gripping his cane. My security team will be out of sight and on standby. Be careful, both of you. Isaiah's dangerous, even with his father's leash tightening. As Charles left to make his calls, Amara turned to Ethan, her eyes searching. Your father. He's more than I expected. He understands. Ethan said he carries his ghosts, his voice soft like yours. He reached for her hand, a gesture that felt natural now. We'll face Isaiah together. No more running. Amara squeezed his hand, her touch steadying him. Together, she agreed, her voice firm with resolve. Outside, the sun rose over the ocean, casting a golden glow across the estate. For the first time, Ethan felt not just the weight of duty, but the strength of family, his father's resolve, Amara's courage, and growing need to protect the woman who was no longer just his wife on paper. The Belvedere Hotel's penthouse suite was a study in opulence, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Manhattan's glittering skyline, plush velvet sofas, a chandelier casting prisms across the marble floor. Ethan Caldwell stood by the entrance, his tailored suit concealing a small recording device clipped to his belt. Beside him, Amara Ellis adjusted the flower-shaped brooch on her elegant black dress, its hidden camera a safeguard Charles had arranged. Her hair was loose, cascading in dark waves, and her glasses were abandoned for the night. Her natural beauty was striking, but her steady gaze anchored Ethan. Tonight, they faced Isaiah Morgan together, armed with Charles's leverage and their resolve. Stay calm, Ethan murmured as the elevator doors opened. We get his threats on record, then we leave. Security's nearby. Amara nodded, her fingers brushing his. I'm ready. Her voice was firm, far from the fear she'd shown in the Hamptons. Ethan felt a surge of pride. She was no longer just hiding, but fighting. Isaiah stood by the window, a glass of scotch in hand, his polished smile not reaching his eyes. His suit was immaculate, but there was a hardness in his posture, a man on the edge. There she is, he said, his gaze locking on Amara, the woman who ran away. Hello, Isaiah, Amara said coolly, her composure a shield. She sat on the sofa, Ethan close beside her, his hand resting lightly on her arm. Isaiah approached, his smile tightening. You clean up nicely, Amara. That librarian disguise was clever, but I knew you couldn't hide forever. What do you want, Morgan? Ethan cut in, his voice sharp, his blue eyes cold. He leaned forward, a subtle barrier between Amara and Isaiah. Isaiah chuckled, swirling his scotch. So protective, touching. He gestured to the seating area. Let's be civilized. Sit. They complied, Ethan keeping Amara close. Isaiah sat across from them, his gaze fixed on her. I want what's mine. We were engaged, Amara. You ran, spread lies about me, and damaged my reputation. Those false allegations cost me politically. They weren't false, Ethan said, his tone deadly calm. I've seen the evidence. Bruises, hospital records. You hurt her. Isaiah waved a dismissive hand. Easily fabricated. But that's not why we're here. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. I'm offering a choice. Option 1. Amara, you admit your lies publicly, clear my name, and return to Boston with me tonight. That's not happening, Ethan growled, his hand tightening on Amara's arm. Option 2, Isaiah continued, ignoring him. I release everything I have. Photos of your transformation, Amara, and financial records showing you changed your identity. The press will love it. Caldwell heir deceived by fraudulent wife. Your family's name will be ruined. Amara's voice cut through, steady and defiant. You have nothing, Isaiah. Just threats. Do I? Isaiah pulled out his phone, displaying a grainy image from their penthouse cameras. Amara without her disguise. This, plus your falsified medical records, paints a pretty story. And your father-in-law's heart might not handle the scandal. Ethan's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice even. You've overlooked option 3. He pulled out his phone, playing a recording. Senator Morgan's voice echoed clearly. Take the overseas posting, Isaiah, or the feds will dig into our accounts. Stay away from the Caldwells. Isaiah's confident facade faltered, his grip tightening on his glass. You're bluffing, he said, but uncertainty crept into his tone. Am I? Ethan replied. Ethan, your father values his legacy. You're a liability now. He's arranged a diplomatic post in Europe. You leave tonight or face an investigation. Isaiah's eyes darted between them, his composure cracking. You think you've won? He snarled, rising and stepping toward Amara. This is your fault, you... Ethan was faster, intercepting him, his arm blocking Isaiah's path. Don't, he said, his voice low, dangerous. One move, and security's here. Amara stood, her brooch's camera capturing every moment. It's over, Isaiah, she said, her voice unwavering. The police have this feed. Your threats, your actions, they're all recorded. Isaiah froze, his eyes wild. You're lying. Test me, Amara challenged, her gaze fierce. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, confirming her words. Isaiah's face contorted with rage, but he backed toward the door. You'll regret this, he spat, grabbing his coat. Both of you. As the door slammed behind him, Ethan pulled Amara into his arms, her trembling betraying the courage she'd shown. You were incredible, he said, his voice thick with relief. I was terrified, she admitted, her head against his chest. But I'm done running. They left the hotel, security trailing discreetly. Back at the Hamptons estate, they stood on the terrace, the ocean's rhythm calming the night's chaos. Ethan turned to her, his hand cupping her cheek. Amara, I love you. The words spilled out, raw and uncalculated, a truth he couldn't deny. Her eyes widened, then softened with tears. I love you too, Ethan. Somewhere along the way, you became my home. He kissed her, a promise sealed under the stars. Their marriage no longer a contract, but a bond forged in courage. Isaiah's threat lingered, but together, they were unbreakable. 6 months had passed since the confrontation at the Belvedere Hotel, and the Caldwell penthouse had become a haven of quiet routine. Ethan Caldwell stood on the balcony, the morning sun gilding the Manhattan skyline, his blue eyes tracing the city he'd shaped. Beside him, Amara Ellis sipped coffee, her hair loose, glasses absent, her natural beauty no longer hidden within these walls. Their marriage, once a contract, had blossomed into love, forged in the crucible of facing Isaiah Morgan together. Amara's work with the Caldwell Foundation's literacy programs thrived, and Ethan had softened his ruthless edge, balancing deals with philanthropy. Yet a lingering unease shadowed their peace, a sense that Isaiah's defeat was too clean. The phone on the glass table buzzed, shattering the calm. Ethan glanced at the screen. His father, Charles, was calling unusually early. "Father, what's wrong?" he answered, his voice tense. Charles said Isaiah Morgan was back in New York, his tone strained. "He used a fake passport and slipped out of our surveillance 3 days ago in Geneva. And he's made contact with Nathan." Ethan's grip tightened, his cousin's name a bitter note. Nathan, sidelined after his shady dealings with the Morgans, had always resented Ethan's success. "What does Nathan have to do with this?" "Get to my office," Charles said. "Both of you. Now." Amara set down her mug, her eyes meeting Ethan's. "Isaiah?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with dread. "And Nathan," Ethan confirmed, his jaw tight. "We're going to the city." 30 minutes later, they sat in Charles's office at Caldwell Properties, the Manhattan skyline, a stark backdrop through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Charles, leaning on his cane, gestured to a security agent who placed a folder on the desk. He said that the photos were taken yesterday outside our Midtown property. Ethan opened the folder, revealing images of Isaiah and Nathan in deep conversation, heads close, expressions conspiratorial. Amara's breath caught, but she leaned forward, studying the photos. "They're planning something," she said, her voice resolute. "Revenge, most likely." Charles nodded, his gray eyes grim. "Isaiah's father has all but disowned him after he embezzled from their family foundation. He's desperate. And Nathan, bitter since you exposed his ties to the Morgans, blames you for his demotion." Ethan's mind flashed to childhood summers at the Hamptons estate, where Nathan's envy had simmered. Ethan, the favored heir, had outshone him in school, sports, and later, business. Nathan's reckless bids for power, shady investments, whispered deals, had always fallen short. "What do they want?" Ethan asked. "Control," Charles said. "Nathan wants your place at the company. Isaiah wants Amara." Amara's hand found Ethan's under the table, her touch grounding him. "We've faced Isaiah before," she said. "We'll handle this." That evening, as they returned to the penthouse, Amara's phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Her face paled as she read it aloud. "Would changing your name keep you safe? You owe me, Amara. Meet me tomorrow, 3 p.m. A Central Park boathouse. Come alone, or Ethan learns what else you've hidden." Ethan's blood ran cold. "What's he talking about?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. "No more secrets, Amara." She sank onto the sofa, her hands twisting in her lap. "Before I met you, I did things I'm not proud of when hiding from Isaiah. I needed money to disappear. My librarian's salary wasn't enough. I took jewelry he'd given me and sold it. And..." She hesitated, her eyes meeting his. "I sold information about his family's business to a rival company. Small things, but enough to help me start over." Ethan processed her words, his heart steady despite the revelation. "Why didn't you tell me? I was afraid you'd see me as Isaiah did. A liar, a thief," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought you wouldn't believe my story if you knew." He took her hands, his touch firm. "You did what you had to do to survive. I don't blame you." His voice softened. "But you're not meeting him. It's a trap. If I don't go, he'll tell you. Or worse, the board," she said, her eyes searching his. "I can't let him hurt you." We face this together, Ethan said, his resolve ironclad. He can't use the truth against us if we own it. Amara nodded, relief softening her features. Together. Ethan called his security chief, Peter. Trace that text. I want to know who sent it. Within minutes, Peter called back. It came from inside the Caldwell building, sir, not Isaiah's phone. Nathan, Ethan realized, his voice hard. He's working with Isaiah, sending messages to scare us. He turned to Amara. We're setting a trap of our own. The next day, Amara approached the Central Park boathouse, a scarf covering her hair and large sunglasses hiding her eyes. A hidden microphone was tucked into her scarf, and Ethan and 2 security agents were positioned nearby. She sat on a bench, the lake's ripples glinting in the afternoon sun, and waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, Nathan sat beside her, his smirk cold. Hello, Amara, he said, not looking at her. It was a beautiful day for a walk. Where's Isaiah? She asked, her voice calm. Around, Nathan said. He thought I should handle this. We want control of Caldwell Properties. Convince Ethan to step down and support me as CEO. Or we'll leak photos of you meeting a Morgan rival recently, we'll say. You sold their secrets, and now ours. The board won't forgive that. Amara kept her composure. And if Ethan steps down? The photos disappear, Nathan said. You and Ethan keep your perfect life, just without the company. I'll need time, she said, her voice steady, the microphone capturing every word. You have until tomorrow, Nathan said, standing. Don't test Isaiah's patience. As he walked away, Ethan emerged, sitting beside her, his expression dark. You heard? She asked. Every word, he said. We end this now. The Caldwell Foundation's office was a quiet fortress at dusk, its modern glass facade reflecting the fading Manhattan skyline. Ethan Caldwell strode through the lobby, his tailored suit crisp despite the tension coiling in his chest. The emergency board meeting at the Caldwell estate had just concluded, with Nathan's betrayal exposed through Amara's recorded confrontation in Central Park. Nathan was out, his removal unanimous. But a new threat loomed. Isaiah Morgan had broken into their penthouse, leaving a note on their bed that read, "This isn't over. I always collect what's owed." Amara was supposed to be safe at the foundation office with her security detail, but Ethan's instincts screamed danger. He reached the front desk, where a stranger in a security uniform sat. "Where's Reynolds?" Ethan demanded, his blue eyes narrowing. "Called in sick, sir," the man replied, his smile too smooth. "I'm covering." Ethan's pulse quickened. Something was wrong. He pulled out his phone to call Amara, but the screen showed no signal. "Jammed," a voice said from behind, smooth and menacing. Ethan turned to find Isaiah Morgan, a small pistol held casually at his side, his polished exterior masking a desperate edge. "Where's my wife?" Ethan asked, his voice deadly calm, every muscle poised for action. "Upstairs," Isaiah said, gesturing toward the elevator with the gun. "Shall we?" Ethan weighed his options. The building was nearly empty, and his security team was outside, unaware of the breach. He nodded, stepping into the elevator, Isaiah's gun trained on him. "You're making a mistake, Morgan," Ethan said, his tone even. "Your father cut you off. You've got nothing left." Isaiah chuckled, but his eyes were cold. "You took everything, Caldwell. Amara was mine. If you hadn't married her, I'd never have found her. Now I'll destroy you both." The elevator opened to the foundation's main floor, dimly lit, except for a glow from the conference room. Amara sat at the table, her back to the door, her posture rigid. Ethan's heart lurched. "Amara," he called, stepping forward. She turned, relief flashing in her eyes, then fear as she saw Isaiah. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice steady despite the strain. He got to the security team. "They're unconscious." Isaiah pushed Ethan into the room, the gun unwavering. "Don't worry, they're alive. I'm not here to kill anyone, just to collect what's owed." "What do you want?" Ethan demanded, positioning himself between Amara and Isaiah. Isaiah sat across from them, the gun resting on the table. 10 million were wired to an offshore account tonight. And Amara, you admit what you are, a liar, a thief. You stole my jewelry, sold my family's secrets. Say it to his face. Amara met Ethan's gaze, her eyes full of regret but unyielding. "It's true," she said, her voice clear. "I took the jewelry to escape you, Isaiah. I sold information to survive. I was desperate, terrified, but Ethan knows, and he still stands with me." Ethan's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. "He said it doesn't change who you are to me," his voice soft but firm. "You're my wife." Isaiah's face twisted with fury. How touching. "But the board won't be so forgiving when I leak your secrets. Nathan's out, but I still have the photos and the records. You have nothing," Ethan said, his tone icy. "The board knows everything. Amara's past, your threats, Nathan's betrayal. We exposed it all tonight. The press release is out. Your leverage is gone." Isaiah's confidence wavered, his hand twitching toward his phone. Amara seized the moment, standing abruptly. "I have a counteroffer," she said, her voice steady. "Everything you've done tonight, threats, the gun, holding us here, it's streaming to the police. Right now." Isaiah's eyes darted to her blouse, where the flower-shaped brooch gleamed. "You're lying," he said, but doubt crept into his voice. "Amara said the camera has been on since we walked in," pointing to the brooch. "The Caldwell security team developed it after your last threat. The police know where we are." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Isaiah's face contorted with panic, the gun wavering. "Please turn it off," he shouted, aiming at Amara. Ethan stepped in front of her, his voice low and lethal. "You're done, Morgan. Drop it, or you won't make it out of this room." For a tense moment, Isaiah hesitated, hatred burning in his eyes. Then, as the sirens closed in, he lowered the gun, backing toward the door. "This isn't over," he snarled. As he turned to flee, the door burst open, 4 police officers with weapons drawn. "Isaiah Morgan," one barked, "you're under arrest for breaking, assault, kidnapping, and illegal possession of a firearm." Isaiah froze, the fight draining from him as handcuffs clicked shut. Ethan pulled Amara into his arms, checking her for injuries. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice thick with worry. "I'm fine," she said, sagging against him. "The security team. They'll be okay?" "They're with paramedics," an officer confirmed. "They'll recover." Amara's breath hitched, relief washing over her. "It's over," she whispered, clinging to Ethan. "Yes," he said, holding her tightly. "It's over." The police led Isaiah away, and Ethan felt the weight of months of fear lift, replaced by the certainty of their partnership. Amara's courage and her quick thinking with the camera had turned the tide. They were no longer just allies. They were a team, unbreakable in crisis. The Caldwell Foundation Women's Shelter stood proud in Brooklyn, its modern glass and brick facade, a beacon of hope against the autumn sky. Ethan Caldwell stood beside Amara Ellis, his tailored suit contrasting with her elegant emerald dress, as they prepared to cut the ribbon at the shelter's opening. A month had passed since Isaiah Morgan's arrest, his threats silenced by a 5-year sentence for kidnapping and weapons charges. Nathan, Ethan's cousin, faced probation for his role in the conspiracy, a quiet resolution to protect the Caldwell name. The shelter, Amara's vision, was a testament to their triumph, a haven for survivors of abuse, born from her journey. The crowd, donors, board members, and local media, gathered before the podium, their murmurs mingling with the crisp breeze. Ethan glanced at Amara, her hair loose, her glasses gone, and her natural beauty radiant, but secondary to the strength in her eyes. Their marriage, once a shield against Isaiah's reach, had become a partnership of love, forged through shared courage. Today, they would face the public not as a facade, but as a united front, reclaiming their story. Amara stepped to the microphone, her voice clear. This shelter is more than a building. It's a promise. A place where women can find safety, rebuild, and rediscover their strength. I know what it's like to run, to hide. This is for those who need a new start. The crowd applauded, and Ethan squeezed her hand, pride swelling in his chest. After the ribbon cutting, they toured 20 modern apartments, counseling rooms, and a child care center. A resident, a woman in her 40s with quiet dignity, approached Amara. "Mrs. Caldwell, thank you for this place and for showing us we can be strong again." Amara embraced her, tears shimmering. "You were always strong. Sometimes we need a safe place to remember." Later, Ethan and Amara faced the board and media at a press conference in the shelter's community room. Rumors of Amara's past had swirled since Isaiah's arrest, and they'd addressed them head-on. Ethan spoke first, his blue eyes steady. "My wife's past was shaped by survival. She fled an abusive relationship, changed her appearance for safety, and built a life of purpose. We shared this with the board, and we share it now to honor her courage and the women this shelter serves." Amara took his hand, her voice unwavering. "I hid to survive, but I'm done hiding. I'm Amara Caldwell, proud to stand with my husband, building a legacy of hope." The room erupted in applause, the board's approval evident in their nods. The media, initially skeptical, shifted to admiration, their questions turning to the shelter's impact. Ethan watched Amara shine, her strength a mirror of the woman who'd faced Isaiah with a hidden camera. Their transparency had disarmed scrutiny, turning their story into one of resilience. That evening, back at the penthouse, Amara stood on the balcony, the city lights a glittering tapestry below. Ethan joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You were incredible today," he said, his voice soft. "The shelter, the press conference. You've turned pain into purpose." She leaned against him, her hands resting on his. "I've been defined by fear for so long. Today, I felt free. But I'm still finding who I am without it." "You're Amara Caldwell," Ethan said, turning her to face him. "Brave, brilliant, my partner in every way." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a velvet box. Inside gleamed an emerald ring, its facets catching the light. "We're married, but that was an arrangement. I am asking you, Amara, to be my wife, not for the board, but for me, because I love you." Her eyes widened, tears spilling over as she smiled. "I love you too, Ethan. Yes, to us, to a real marriage." She held out her hand, and he slid the ring onto her finger, its weight a promise of their shared future. He kissed her, a slow, deep kiss that sealed their vow under the city's glow. When they parted, Amara's laughter was light, unburdened. "Not bad for an arranged marriage," she teased. "Not bad at all," Ethan said, pulling her close. He thought of their journey, from a cold proposition to this moment of unguarded love. His mother's words echoed, "Love is worth the risk." He'd found that truth with Amara, a partner who'd transformed his world. As they stood together, Amara spoke softly. "I started therapy last week. To heal, to understand who I am after Isaiah. It's hard, but it's helping." Ethan kissed her forehead. "You're not alone in that either. Whatever you need, I'm here." They lingered on the balcony, the city alive below. Amara, once hidden, was now fully herself, her strength a beacon for others. Ethan, once distant, had found strength in vulnerability, his heart open to a love he'd never expected. Their marriage, born of necessity, had become a legacy of redemption, trust, and a promise-filled future.